Hey, everybody. So as Atika said, Zach Maley, Associate Director of Paid Strategy here at Milestone. And today, we're going to talk about a very common problem that most advertisers are going to face if they're running any kind of, an advertising budget. And half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half. So there are certain things that we can do to not only kind of prevent these things in the future, but also set ourselves up for success, scalability, and looking forward to how do we adapt to changing market conditions. So why does this waste kind of occur? And a big part of it is that today our customers are very complex. When we're looking at how many different ways that they're kind of accumulating the information in order to make these purchase decisions, they're looking at our social media channels, they're looking at our ads, they're looking at the website copy, they're talking to their friends. It gets very complicated. But when we try to kind of put a piece around this, we have to understand how all those different aspects come together to create one fluid journey for those customers. At the end of the day, at the center of this is our website. Around that, we have all the paid advertising side of things, but we also, are leveraging email marketing, social media marketing, collectively bring all these different pieces together for that holistic customer journey. And one of the challenging pieces as well is this is not a linear path anymore. Customers are jumping back and forth from consideration, conversion, experience. And all these different touch points were responsible for providing value, because then we're moving forward and building that trust with those customers to eventually get them to convert. So 4-Hour Workweek, who here has read that book? Great book. Reason being is because it really demonstrates the power of frameworks. Frameworks allow us to create predictable, repeatable results. And they have to stay agile enough to kind of adjust, like Ram was saying, for these different market trends that are coming out. But they also have to provide enough of a barrier to allow our teams to excel in the areas that they're going towards. First off is, how are we going to align our team to our business goals? We have to foundationally kind of understand where it is that we're trying to get to before we can start taking the different steps in order to get there. And so, regardless of if it's increasing awareness for your brand, if it's, bringing in more foot traffic into a restaurant or to, one of the spa locations, understanding where we are currently and then where we're trying to move towards is the only way to kind of align our teams and to be able to get to where it is that we're going. Next, after we have kind of what that end destination looks like, what customers are going to allow us to get there? That comes down to, really fundamentally understanding who our audience is. Taking first-party data that you guys all have, Google Analytics, if it's, different display networks, Facebook, Instagram, wherever that information is coming together to paint a holistic picture of who that customer is. After we have the audience and the goal solidified, next we want to kind of align what that customer journey looks like to the strategies that we're going to roll out. So each one of those strategies kind of correlates to a different purpose. When we're looking at where all the different marketing channels fit, it's not a one-stop shop kind of fixed solution. Display advertising, great for generating brand awareness, but your branded search terms are really where those conversion events happen. And so bringing all those different pieces together, mapping it out across the entire customer journey, really allow us to identify and understand how we're providing the value through all the different marketing mediums that we can leverage. So one question that we get asked all the time is, how do I know which is the right channels to be advertising on, and then where do we kind of break these different pieces up? And a part of that really has to do with customer behavior. Anytime that we see shifts in that behavior, meaning like a mobile device, for instance. If somebody is browsing on their mobile device, they're looking for snackable type content. They're not going to be, putting in their credit card, making those purchases, because it's just not a user-friendly type of experience. And so when we're looking at, where those shifts are happening, that's really where we can start better aligning the customer journey to the campaign types that we have, and then also the value that we're trying to provide. Once we have the channel solidified, it's really important to make sure that we're looking at the right KPIs. So different KPIs are going to tell whether or not we have, say, if we're looking at awareness-based tactics, looking at conversions is not the end goal. It's too many degrees of separation between where we are currently and then where that customer is going to end up. A much better kind of understanding of how well those campaigns are working really come down to what is our bounce rate? Are we hitting the right target audiences? What is the time on website? Are they actually engaging with the content that we're putting out in front of them? When we do move down that journey, then we look at differences between, say, new versus existing customers. Obviously, then, as we kind of transition into that conversion phase, we want to be tracking and looking at different aspects such as phone calls. What is the revenue that we're actually getting out of these? And then, moving into that experience, like what is the cross-sell and the upsell opportunities that we have for these customers? If we know that somebody is coming to, your property, it makes a lot of sense that we should be targeting those customers for remarketing ads to build up the other amenities of the hotel, what you guys have to offer. Once we have all of those different pieces kind of solidified, next we want to make sure that we're interpreting that information correct. Anytime that you're running, say, a paid investment, you have to understand how that investment kind of goes through that entire customer journey. Reason being is if we just focus at the bottom of the funnel, brand awareness tends to dry up. And that's really detrimental to the overall kind of growth because we're constantly adding in new inventory into the market. Products are changing. And we have to make sure that we're looking collectively at all of those different pieces and then how we're providing the value, making the right investment decisions so that we know where it is that we're going to be trying to, or planning those marketing budgets into the future. And so if we talk about some of the trends that we're seeing right now, why is it important to have more of a framework rather than a process? So as Rand was saying, we have lots of different changes that are going on in the search engine results pages. Organic is slowly getting pushed down, ad formats are getting larger. We're seeing actually a lot of different kind of aspects coming into the overall search engine result page. All of this comes down to an opportunity cost. Sometimes we're going to see a decline in overall organic, for instance. It's not necessarily, though, a bad thing. Part of that is just Google is adding additional ways for somebody to book your property from this page. And so a big part of that we've seen over the last year is really a big focus on meta search. And so when we're looking at meta search, it is a very bottom of the funnel type tactic. A user knows exactly where it is that they want to stay. They understand exactly what the property has to offer, but then so much so that they just need a price point in order to make that final decision. The issue with that, though, is it's actually shifting a lot of user behavior within those SERP pages. And so if we're looking, for instance, at a snapshot of last year versus this year, the blue lines represent total impressions. The red lines are the mobile impressions. And so what's happening is for a lot of our non-branded keywords, those keywords that drive new customer acquisition, the total number of impressions is actually declining because users are now starting to engage with meta search much more in those avenues. And so having an adaptable strategy to be able to capitalize on these types of shifts is really important. Oops. All right, with that being said, we're going to bring up Tanima from Google, and then we're going to do a Q&A session. Tanima.
Thank you. Was that planned, you guys? Was I supposed to come after the previous? My goal for today is going to be to, at the end of this, so that you guys don't go back and think, did they send somebody incompetent who deliberately can't answer the questions? And my second goal will be, I'll try and stick to the questions here and not deviate from the previous conversation that we've had, because going maybe in front of Congress is above my pay grade, but I do have a lot of answers, and I would love to talk to you guys about it, so come and find me after this.
All right. Perfect. So kicking things off, staying on the topic of trends, what do we think is the most important element for planning kind of that digital strategy?
Most important. Right. So I think, Zach, you spoke about this a little bit, but I think today, audiences is probably the most important if I think about what you guys can take back. So machine learning obviously is pretty big right now, and so audiences have always been around, but we know a lot more about your audience now based on the signals, right? And so making sure you map who exactly you want to target, and then finding that right audience on Google or any digital platform that you're doing is probably the biggest thing that you should be focusing on right now, is what I would say.
Definitely. So if you don't understand who it is that you're trying to target, what it is you're trying to accomplish, you're never going to be able to map the right channels in order to go and accomplish those goals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So next, where do we see mobile impacting the customer journey today, but then also looking forward into the future?
So mobile has been a part of our conversations for 5-6 years now, right? We all know we need to have a good mobile speed, we need to have a good UI experience. I used to work with Facebook 5-6 years ago, and that's when they had announced that we're going mobile first, right? So it's been a part of our conversations. I think what's relevant now, I would say is two things when you think about mobile, right? One, mobile searches right now are 65% of all searches that are happening, right? Now, if you think about the user journey, desktop actually is where most of the conversions are happening. If you look at, and you will see this in your own data if you're tracking the last click, that if you compare mobile versus desktop is where you will see conversions, right? Think about your own user behavior. Today, if I'm searching for something, my first point will probably be mobile, maybe even my second and third, and then chances are, if it's a big buy that I'm making, I will go on my desktop and make that buy or booking, right? We know this, and we're seeing this in trends, but what we're not doing is attributing or quantifying what mobile is in that user journey, right? And that's where it's important now to go back and think, yes, conversions are happening desktop, but what is mobile's credit to that final conversion? So that's point number one. Point number two, I would talk about near me searches. So if you guys are a local business, searches near me have grown 300% in the last 3 years, right? So if you think, and if you add like near me tonight and open near me, that's 900%. That's huge. That not a lot of advertisers right now, if you're a local business who wants people to visit, are capturing. So that's one takeaway. If you go back today, is start capturing this audience. It's only going to grow more. And with your near me campaigns, you also have, Google Maps, where you want to start showing, and Google My Business, so that the system knows that you're a store, you're somebody that wants people to come to your store. That would be my two points.
Perfect. And what would you say is the largest kind of advantage for companies to, say, consolidate everything into one agency?
So I'm glad you asked this question. I've actually worked with agencies for 4 years now, and with Google, traditionally, if you think about companies, we've traditionally thought of separating our advertising into upper funnel, maybe lower funnel agencies, right? Or maybe by channel. This made sense some time back, but now I think this question is more relevant than ever, because the lines between upper funnel, middle funnel, lower funnel are blurring, right? If you remember, Zach had this one slide where he spoke about how the user journey has become a lot more complex. People are moving from consideration to brand awareness, from brand awareness back into purchase intent. People have a very complex sort of user journey. And so right now, a lot of your branding activities can feed into your search activity or your sort of lower funnel activity. So your branding activity can feed into lower funnel saying, these are the kind of, these are the people that you should probably be advertising to. And your lower funnel can feed into your upper funnel saying, hey, we figured certain signals that people that are converting are using, and therefore use these kind of audiences for your branding, right? All of this is very hard to do if you're working in silos, and all of these are happening in silos. So you need for this to be seamless, and for that, having one agency or one place where you're doing most of your digital, whether it's upper funnel versus lower funnel or different channels, that becomes extremely, extremely important and significant. I wouldn't go as far as saying maybe even traditional media, because traditional and digital are not entirely speaking yet, and we still don't have that seamless sort of interaction between audiences. But within digital, at least, this has become a very important piece to consider.
All right, so with that being said, Google is making a lot of pushes and headway towards moving advertisers off of that last click attribution model. So with that being said, what is the primary driver of that?
I mean, attribution, again, it's a hot topic right now, but honestly, this should have been something that we should have been speaking about 5 years ago when mobile came about, right? If you look at if you think about the same example that I just said, where mobile plays a huge role in that final conversion that's coming in. If you're an advertiser who decided to, based on the data that you're seeing on last click data, you decide, hey, you know what, mobile isn't really getting in conversions, I switch off mobile, right? You're gonna see a significant drop in your desktop conversions. But none of us is gonna do that because we know mobile is important. If you take the same example into, say, into your campaigns, you don't know which campaign is assisting that final conversion, right? Right now, we're assuming certain campaigns that don't show conversions are not important, and that's where non-last click attribution comes in. You want to know what are the campaigns or ads that are contributing to that conversion, but also where are you wasting money? And Google, or not just Google, I think most companies are talking about attribution now, because that's the full picture. And right now, a lot of us don't have that full picture when we're investing dollars and moving that around.
Mm-hmm. So essentially, when you're making those types of budgeting-based decisions, you have to have a holistic view of where it is that your customers are coming from, and then each of those different touch points. If you're not looking collectively there, then what ends up happening is we tend to gravitate towards, say, the bottom of the funnel, performance-driven, tactics. Issue is that we're never going to be focused and growing the overall brand. And as we're adding in new inventory, new products are coming into the market, then what happens is our share starts to dilute, which then continues to impact that bottom of the funnel.
Yeah, I agree.
So how does Google foresee voice search impacting advertising in the future?
So voice is a big buzzword right now, right? This is probably the one place that I would agree with Ran, is that voice is, so actually let me take a step back. Voice searches are increasing. In 2016, Google released that voice searches were 20% of all the searches that are happening in the US. And ComScore has had this study where they say it'll probably be 50% by 2020, sorry. So obviously, voice search is becoming a more and more significant part of how we're looking for data. When we think about purchasing, though, or when we think about the e-com business, right now it's $2 billion, and it's expected to become $40 billion in the next 3 years. So purchasing decisions will also start happening on voice. Having said that, unless you're a business, and something that Grant mentioned earlier as well, unless you're a business that's really looking to create apps for voice or create user experiences for voice, I would think you need to think about two things, right? One, make sure that a longer term project is that making sure that your business is easy to interact with voice in the coming years. Longer project. What can you do right now when you go back home? There are three things I would say. So when we're looking at voice trends, we're seeing that the text and voice patterns are the same. What's different is that voice searches are more generic. And so when you go back home, what you can implement right now to capture the voice searches is one, expand your keywords and to more generic terms. Two, probably do dynamic search ads because you can't obviously go after all the keywords, and if your campaigns are very tightly themed, use a dynamic search ad so that the system can find relevant ads and searches. With dynamic search ads, you don't really need to put in keywords. The system will find relevant searches and show your ads. And the third is probably use automation when it comes to bidding, so that again the system is able to figure out that this person is relevant to your business, and therefore make sure that your ads show. I hope that's relevant. Again, when you think about voice, it's a big project. It's a lot going on, but I wanted to give you something that you can really go back and try today, right now.
All right, and that is it.
That was easy. All right, thank you.
Any questions from the audience before we send them away? Okay, one moment.
Good afternoon. James Mamager with Hirsch Hospitality Management. I want to revisit your first question that you answered. You had said about audience targeting. What tools do you recommend would give us great insights to audiences if we're going to start to build that campaign?
So that's a great question. The good part is a lot of Google Ads itself has a lot of tools that you can already use, right? If you actually go in Google Ads, you'll find audience insights even for your search campaigns, and it'll tell you kind of what is the profile of people that are searching for your ads, or also profile of people that you're probably remarketing to, and all of that. So that's point number one. Point number two, when I talk about audience, I think it's important for us to think from a standpoint of, am I going lower funnel versus upper funnel, right? So if I want to go after lower funnel audiences, you can still brand to high intent audiences, right? So you can brand to somebody who has searched for your product on Google search. Let me give you a separate example. Say I look for hotels today on Google search. You can show me a video 2 days from now, even though I haven't come to your website, about your hotel, right? So you're branding to a very high intent audience. And those are the kind of insights that you want to start looking at. If you really just search the different audience types that you have capabilities right now, you'll find all of that information. And then you can also create custom intent audiences, which is if your audience is not already something that Google has developed for you, you can actually create that audience based on giving Google indicators like, hey, this is the kind of people that I'm looking for. Find that audience for me.
Mm-hmm. So also to add to that, I think it's a combination of first-party data that you guys have access to, but taking it a step, bigger. If we're just looking at, say, the conversions that are happening within the website, we're not looking at anything that's going on through the phone, we're not looking at anything, just walk-ins. So it's really taking that holistic view of who that customer is and then how that kind of aligns to that path to purchase. I think the other side of that too is, taking the time to understand who your customer isn't. Like there's going to be certain segments within the audience that we don't want to advertise to. We want to be getting in front of the customers that are going to be using the different amenities that you guys have to offer. Those are the types of customers that'll come back time and time again, not just for that one single stay.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. You know your audience already because you have all of the email databases and all of that. If you upload that, obviously Google will not have access to your emails, that's your data. But if you upload that, Google can find signals for similar audiences that are behaving the same way, right? And that's your audience insight right there.
Gotcha. Does Google look at any other sources for audience insights?
So Google has, well, there's the display network, there's search and YouTube. So within the Google ecosystem itself, it's all there. And so we're looking at insights and how people are interacting with all of these to pick up signals on who to advertise to. One other tip I'll give you is you can now add audiences on your Google search campaigns, and then that will give you more insight into how your search is behaving. So that's another thing that you can do now to find more about profiling your audiences.
You got time for one more?
Good afternoon. I have two questions. The first question is, how does Google learn metadata? As in, sometimes there's metadata that we put into our header, but Google does not recognize it so it doesn't crawl it. It's just like we can only use meta that Google recognizes. That's the first question. And then second question is, how does one build the relationship between keyword and meta? Like, how can we fuse those two uses of meta and keywords?
It's a great couple of questions. I may not be the best person to answer this, but is there anybody on milestones and that? Okay.
I think keywords are gone. Literally, keywords are gone. Now, keywords are important, but it's about user intent, right? Yes, meta is important. Meta tags are important. Keywords are important, but it's more about the intent. And if your queries are about informational searches, which is zero click, which Rand's talk about, then we don't have to just worry about keywords and meta tag in isolation, right? We have to worry about the entire intent. How are we solving customer intent? Okay, yeah. Okay, any other question, team? Yeah?
Wondering regarding cross data between different Google information and data existing. For example, I can be in control to the data I have on my hotels, in my hotels and so on. Nevertheless, if I want to cross data between, for example, business or first class travelers to the airport where my hotels are, to match this with suites or homes or villas in upscale level, is there any way we can, and how can we do something like this?
So if I'm understanding your question correctly, you want to find out how you can find the right audience based on, data that's not yours, right? And this is what I was kind of referring to earlier, is that, say in your example where you're saying you want to find the audience that is in a particular area, around a particular airport, and show ads to them. We can't give you the data into who are these people who are doing that. But what you can do is there's a way to indicate to Google, and this is what I was talking about, custom intent or custom affinity, where you say, here, this is the profile of people that I'm looking for, right? Based on either its keywords, or it could be based on the websites that they're visiting. And based on that, the system, our system will be able to identify a pool of people that are that audience, who you can then target. So the short answer is you can do that. You can create audiences in any. Forget in hotels. If you want audience in who's buying XYZ book, well, you can build that as well.
And the other side of that as well is, when we're looking at our own audiences, we just understand the customers that are coming into our property. Realistically, though, there's a lot of other audiences out there that probably aren't coming to your property, but are being attracted to the general market. So I think, consumer bureaus, any of those other third-party information, even looking at, say, different flights coming into the area. Do we have a big pickup, say, between London to Tulum? If we start seeing that there's an increase, then maybe that's somewhere that we should be paying attention to, and then mapping that to the right property.
Great, thank
First of all, these guys did a phenomenal job, yes? And guys, the picture was a little bit blurry because, again, Ren is a passionate speaker and we all love his passion. But honestly, Tanya and Google team have been a phenomenal partner for Milestone. They literally have, and again, with our partnership, we do get access to a lot of awesome information these guys have. They have literally trained us to do the very best for advertisers, anybody on our platform. We have monthly, weekly review with their team. So thank you so much, Tanya. And literally, her insight has been just so phenomenal. So thank you.